welcome back to the next episode of the TRA Performance Education Podcast with me, your tiny Titan host. I'm actually in the wrong t-shirt. Look at that. The boys are actually going to kill me, but it proves that I'm a Titan. But it's the Titan actually talking on the TRA podcast today. So never mind. We'll start again. Hey, tiny Titan host Vicky Masita. Today in the hot seat, I have got an amazing guest, which I'm very, very happy to have on today, Mr. Patrick Umphrey. Hello, sir. How are you?
I am wonderful. Thank you for having me.
It's so nice when people actually say that they're wonderful or they're fabulous or they're amazing, rather than just kind of going, yeah, I'm okay. It's nice to be fabulous and wonderful. So, Patrick, for people who don't know who you are, would you mind just giving us a little bit of a background and tell us your expertise on why we have brought you on to this amazing podcast?
Yeah, well, I am an online coach. And I run a group called Eat, Train, Progress, and it's a very fun and enriching community online. And I have been doing this been coaching for about 6 or 7 years now, probably 6 years.
Okay.
And I also have a personal training certification through NASM. I let that lapse, and then I pursued a certification with Shredded by Science. I'm not sure.
Oh, very good. Yep.
Lawrence Judd and Luke Johnson and those guys, but it's a really good certification course that I enjoyed a great deal. And I work with a combination of general population clients who are looking to lose weight. I work with some fitness enthusiasts who are looking to gain muscle. And I work with quite a few competitive powerlifters. That's sort of a niche that I have somehow just sort of fell into, and I love it. And I have some local clients that I work with, and I go to their meets and handle them and such. And then I have several online clients from all around the U.S. and a few that are from other countries. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
So when you say that you've got a niche about working with competitive powerlifters, what do you actually love so much about powerlifters? Because I program powerlifters as well. I do all of their nutrition for them with performance and performance-based nutrition. Yeah. So what do you love so much about it? Just because I love it as well.
I think in the situation that I'm in, I have plenty of clients who wanted to learn how to get into powerlifting, and they hired me to prep them. So they're coming from a place of not knowing much about the sport to doing their first meet. And I think the thing that I like the most about this is that I get to see it's not only the progress in that they get stronger, but it's the progress in that how much the sport causes them to give their training a purpose. Okay. And it causes them to participate in a community of like-minded people who are supportive, because I think that the powerlifting community is incredibly supportive, and that I'm sure you obviously have experienced this too, where you go to a meet and you might see someone who is like 70 years old and it's their first time powerlifting, and the amount of cheering they get and the amount of support. And it doesn't matter how much weight's on the barbell. It's the fact that they're doing this, this community is fantastic. And so I get to see this, I'll call it a transformation, where people get this confidence and they get this just thing in their life that is something that spills over into other areas of their life, if that makes sense. It's more than just about putting a barbell on your back. It's that you're getting this amount of enjoyment that I just think it's a really positive thing.
Definitely. I totally agree with that, and I found that it's very, very empowering as well, powerlifting wise. To be strong is something that's completely different than having a set of abs, don't you think?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, not to take away from the enjoyment someone might get out of their aesthetics, but I would argue that, being strong has more purpose in day-to-day life, I think.
Yeah, it can be more functional, couldn't it? Yeah, that's it. And the thing is that you can really build a fantastic looking physique just by being a powerlifter as well, can't you? Because you see so many people and they just kind of go, oh, powerlifters are just big and fat because they just want to weight, so you've just got to have more mass and stuff. But actually, if you build a massive foundation with the heavy weight that you do, obviously it grows some muscle. So then when you cut down for a weight class, you can then see that physique develop.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So what do you think in the group Eat, Train, Progress? Obviously, you've got like nearly 14,000 members in that group now, don't you?
Yeah, it's actually just about to hit 16,000. So
Oh, right. Okay, my apologies. So
that's okay.
nearly 16,000 people in this group. So what made you decide to start that group, and how did it just kind of grow exponentially at that?
This is I find this to be a kind of crazy story because it's how I got into online coaching. I started out on MyFitnessPal in the forums.
Okay.
And this was when I was about 2 years into fitness, and I had just started following people who I would consider to be leaders in the industry in terms of the quality of information they present to people. I wouldn't want to name an entire list, but I'll just name a few guys that were incredibly influential to me and still are. And that would be Eric Helms and Alan Aragon.
Yeah.
These guys have really shaped not only what I know, but how I think. And so I started branching out. I went to MyFitnessPal into their forums. They have a very large forums there. And I noticed that the quality of information being presented there was lackluster, to put it politely. And so I started responding to threads, and over the course of a couple of years, I built a reputation as being one of the more knowledgeable people in that specific forums. And I eventually created a group called Eat, Train, Progress inside the MyFitnessPal forums.
Okay.
And at that time, my goal was to create a subforum where I could determine the flow of information. I could much like you would do in a Facebook group. I wanted to give people information. I wanted to be able to answer questions. And so that's kind of where it started. And after about a year of that group grew to about 10,000 people. It became very productive. And that's how I really started with the online coaching. I would have people create threads where they fill out a template of specific questions I would ask them. And then I would go into the thread and just kind of help them with their issues that they're having, all free of charge, of course. That's not coaching, but that was kind of the foot in the door of getting into the process of coaching. And I actually started this group with a friend of mine named Sarah, who's now a longtime friend of mine. I've been friends with her for 8 or 9 years now, and she's now also a client.
Oh,
and
wow.
I prep her for powerlifting now, but she was the one that started the group with me. So it started out as a kind of a dual kind of a thing. And then I pursued it as a full-time coaching thing. And she just said, hey, have fun. And so I eventually moved this onto Facebook because I figured I need to get this on a bigger social media platform. And so it was August of last year that I started the Eat, Train, Progress group on Facebook. And it kind of migrated over there.
Yeah. And I mean, how did you manage to actually get nearly 16,000 people interested in that group? Because was there anything special that you did promotional wise? Because I know I'm going to actually say this in a bit of a giggly way as well, but you're a professional magician, for close-up magic.
Yes, I do close-up magic. Yep.
That's it. So did you put like a little video on and say that just have a look at this and then bring people into the group?
No, I didn't. I will say that I think it's a combination of things that, and I can't state this as fact, but I have assumptions as to how the group got to be what it is. And I think it's a number of things in conjunction with each other. I think that one thing is that I display my personal values in how the group is run and how I conduct myself in the group. And that would include things like not allowing people to just be dickheads to each other. Can I say that on your podcast?
Absolutely.
Wasn't sure. So, if people are just plain being D-bags, they're going to get either warned or removed. We don't allow spam in the group. So if someone tries to sell, a supplement or something like that without prior approval, like if someone gets on there and promoting their MLM or something, they're going to get booted. And I also want to provide good discussion. And so actually having informative topics, I think, is very helpful. And I also think that luck is a big part of it. I happen to somehow, some of the bigger names in the industry have shared the group. I've become friends with them. And so I think that that's helped a very big amount. And I would never downplay something like that. So like, there's been a couple times where Alan Aragon's shared the group to his wall and just said, hey, you guys really need to come here. It's a really great place. James Fell has also shared it a few times. And so on one of his pages, he has like 50,000 followers or something like that. So anytime, the first time Alan posted it, I think we went from 800 to 1,200 overnight. from
Wow.
him.
Okay. Yeah. Big jump.
And so, that obviously is a gigantic part of doing that. And so I think that through the good fortune of being able to call these guys friends of mine, I think that I'll call that luck, but I think that's a big part of that.
Definitely. Now, one thing I did want to ask you about the group actually is, and one thing that I really admire as well is that you have a stipulation rule that people are not allowed to tear form apart if people put in squat videos or lifting videos or anything like that, do you? Yeah. Now, I really, really love that because of the simple fact that on a number of groups, if you share a video, people will just tear you apart. And that could have some really damaging psychological effects to anybody who's starting a big strength phase. So explain why you've got that on a rule.
Yeah, I think that some of my comments, some people may not like, but I'm going to be very honest because that's how I roll.
Definitely, me too.
Here's the thing that I'm going to say that I think people might not like, but I think it's true. I think when women post videos, it's pretty common to get a bunch of dudes that come on there and try to correct their form when they didn't ask for it.
Sure.
I'm not a woman, so I don't know what that feels like, but I have to imagine that shit gets old. Yeah. And I have to imagine that gets annoying. And so I think that's a small part of it. That's not exclusively the part of it. And so I don't want to make it sound like it's just this gender thing because it's not, but that's something worth mentioning. I think that there are a number of times where, as you said, people can post a video and they get unsolicited feedback when that simple act could discourage other people from posting their videos because they probably, they might be in a situation where they don't want other people telling them how to lift. I think that when it happens in a public gym, it's also considered rude a lot of the time, even when someone has good intent. Now, to be clear, I also think that if you're the type of person where if someone comes up to you and gives you advice and you're receptive to it, hey, that's cool. I don't want to make it sound like in all cases that's always rude. It's just that sometimes people post videos not for the purpose of getting advice. That's not always why someone is going to post a video. And so I really wanted to just be respectful of this idea that sometimes people just want to show off something they're proud of. Someone might say, hey guys, I just hit a PR. I want to share this with you. I'm so excited. And I want an environment where people can express that excitement without then having someone come in and say, hey, great job, but your knees caved in on that squat. You really need to fix that or you're going to get hurt. And then there's another reason, and that's that a lot of times the advice sucks.
Yeah.
Especially when you have a large community of people of various levels of experience. And I would imagine even among experienced coaches, there probably still is some advice that we're not all going to agree with. And so that brings in another element of, well, how do you even know that the person that's just randomly showing up to give advice is not giving really bad advice? So I think that's another piece of it. So I think that's hopefully a fairly good summation of why we put that in. And we do, just to be clear, we still value self-improvement. And so all we do is this, we just say, hey, if you want feedback, just make it clear when you post the video, just say, I'm looking for feedback on this. Can I get a form check? And sometimes we even say, it's a good idea if you're posting a video and you don't want technical feedback, just say, hey, I'm not looking for feedback here. I just want to share this that I'm really proud of. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, I think in my opinion, that's a good way to do it.
Yeah, I totally agree as well. Definitely so. And I like the idea that you say that when women post videos, it does get old when men just kind of go, oh yeah, you did this and blah, blah, and all the rest of it. Because for a lot of powerlifters that I know, especially women that are getting into it, they're normally small, lightweight women. And all of a sudden they just want to get strong and lift some heavy AF weights. And for men to either correct their form on every video that they put on or every conditioning session that they put on, either that or they start to become a little bit more smutty, don't they? And they're like, oh, girl, you've got a great ass in that video and stuff. And that gets worse. That gets older a hell of a lot quicker than,
I would have to imagine that. Yeah. If that happens in our group, you're basically just getting booted. If something like that happens, we have no patience for that whatsoever. Brings me to another point that I wanted to bring up that I should have mentioned about the growth of my group.
Yeah.
I have what I consider to be just fantastic moderators. They're so good at what they do. They share a lot of the same values that I do. And I could not have, I couldn't be where I'm at today if it weren't for the work that they put in to keep the group running the way that it does. And so they're awesome at that.
That's really nice, and really nice that you value those. So out of curiosity, how many moderators do you have?
I would actually have to look because it is a voluntary position. Fortunately, the people who do it enjoy doing it. And so they say, yeah, I'd love to do that. And so I think it's around 5 or 6. I've had a couple that will do it for a couple months. And then for whatever reason, most of them, it's because they leave Facebook permanently for a while. It's not that they go, hey, I can't moderate anymore. It's that I'm taking a Facebook break entirely. And so I think we have 4 that are very active and a couple more that kind of come in periodically. So
that's wicked, really good. Okay, so moving off the Facebook group just a little bit, but kind of keeping it in the same realms of things. Mm-hmm. Let's have a look at your particular programming for your elite powerlifters then.
Sure.
What I'm more interested in is how you program them, but that they're not going to get completely and utterly psyched out by the program. Because sometimes, do you actually write down the amount of weight that they need to lift on a week-by-week basis?
Depends on the lifter. In almost all cases, there will be some form of a load recommendation. I am a huge fan of auto-regulation using RPE.
Sure.
And so the majority of my athletes, including general population clients who are not necessarily strength athletes, I will still include some form of auto-regulation. But when I say some form, that might look different depending on, the client. But typically, I will have a load recommendation. I will have an RPE range that I expect them to land in. Sometimes it's a single value. So for example, if we are 2 weeks out from a meet and I know that they're going to be hitting their heaviest deadlift sometime in that week, then I might specify pretty accurately where I want those, loads, volumes, and RPE. If we're further out, I might have just a range where I say your loads are going to be this. RP is going to be 6 to 8 in these sets, and the reps might be defined, or it might be a range within a couple of reps. Sorry to interrupt. Dog is barking. I'll be back in just one moment. I'm so sorry.
No worries. No, that's cool. That's cool. So just to kind of fill in the gap, Pat did actually warn me about this, saying that he's got a lovely dog at home and that if he barks, he is just going to jump up and go and let him in. And we all know that I have a crazy dog as well. So we are going to allow Pat to do that. But I'm not going to cut the podcast because we don't do that. We keep bloopers in, don't we? And this one is called the dog blooper. And here is Pat back. Just on schedule after we said it was the blooper. But yeah, okay then, Pat, that's cool. So carry on. So RPE scale you were talking about. Now let's just kind of have a look at that RPE scale, because I am a massive fan of actually going to failure. Now, not for powerlifting, but for bodybuilding, because I'm a hybrid athlete.
Okay.
So I will go to failure. Now, my RPE scale is completely different to somebody else's RPE scale, because my intensity when I do some bodybuilding style training is absolutely ridiculous. So, and a lot of people don't push themselves like this. So how, when you schedule an RPE and you say it's a scale,
yeah,
if they send you a video and you say, right, I want you to do an RPE 8, mm-hmm. and they just kind of rack it up like it was nothing.
Yeah.
How do you give them the feedback on that to kind of say, dude, that was not an RPE 8? Without obviously throwing them under the bus in a way.
Yeah. Great. That's a great question. I think there's a few different ways to handle that. I think for me, it depends on the person that I'm speaking to. It depends on how important it is that their RPE scale is very close to precise. And when I say how important that is, I do think there's likely a difference between a beginning trainee who is just trying to get in shape. They might have a lot more forgiveness in terms of whether or not that RPE is precise, whereas a competitive powerlifter a couple of weeks out probably want to be pretty close to accurate, because if that's off by a great deal, like if you're prescribing an RPE 8.5 or so, and they send in a video and it looks like a 4, obviously they might not be getting the same training stimulus that you're trying to elicit. And so that does matter. So I would look at the bar speed. I would be on them with Skype. I would have the video on a shared screen, so we're both looking at it. And I would just talk to them about it and say, hey, I really think that this might feel like you've got only 1 rep left in the tank. You might report that this is RPE 9. but look at this bar speed and look at how straight the bar path is and look at how that just looks perfect. I think you have a little more in the tank. The other thing that I might do, if the program allows it, so depending on the stage of training that we're in, I would probably prescribe something like an as many reps as possible set using a load that, say, I think it's a load where they're going to get, they think they're going to get 4 or 5 reps, and I think they're going to get 8 to 10. I might say, hey, on your final set, I want you to take this to as many reps as you can, maybe leave just 1 in the tank. So not quite failure. So for safety reasons, just to the point where you think, boy, I can only get 1 more, and really push yourself. I did that with a client recently, and she ended up doing, I think, 11 reps with what was a predicted 4 to 5 rep set. And
wow. Okay.
and doing that test was important because it resulted in us modifying loads the following block based on that. So we kind of use that as a benchmark to say, you know what, we're probably progressing a little faster than we think. Your RPE scale on it was for the squat. Your RPE scale on this particular lift is probably off a little bit. And I'll note that it sometimes is lift dependent. I've seen people where they're very accurate at predicting RPE on the bench press or even on a deadlift, and on a squat they're not, or vice versa, where there's a particular lift where for whatever reason they are just a little bit miscalibrated. And so anyway, that's a tool that can be used that can kind of open their eyes in a way to say, okay, I guess what I thought was RPE 8 was nowhere near RPE 8 because now I've experienced this and now I have this frame of reference to compare it to.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I have exactly the same thing with my clients, whether they're general population or not. If it's a general population client, I tend not to use an RPE scale. Mm-hmm. I tend to just kind of say, right, do these many sets of this many reps and give them a rep range. Yep. And then ask me to ask them to send me a video. And that's when I'll kind of assess it and say, right, do you know what? We're going to kind of go up the weight a little bit, or we're going to downregulate the reps a little bit more. So then intuitively, we're going to put the weight on the bar and that kind of thing. But it's like you said as well, psychologically, you've got to match your feedback to the client that you have. Definitely. Because some people you can kind of go, dude, stop fucking about. That was way too easy. That was not an RPE. Get back under the bar. But then other people, you've got to make what I like calling a shit sandwich by saying something really good. Yep. You know exactly what I mean by that.
Shit technique.
Yeah, exactly. But just kind of going, that was really good, great effort, this, that, and the other. And then kind of go, but you could have probably done this a little bit better or blah, blah. But overall, really good job. So that's what I like to call a shit sandwich. One
thing I just wanted to add in is that when I mention implementing RPE in some fashion with newer clients, I do agree that it is usually, almost always, much less accurate for that population base because they don't have the experience or the frame of reference to know where their limitations are. But the way that I like to start that process is to prescribe loads, sets, and reps and have them report back an RPE. So they do what's assigned. They start identifying where they think RPE or reps in reserve. Where do they think that landed? We watch some video. We take a look at it. And then in conjunction with doing that, here's one example. Suppose I have a client who is squatting 3 days per week, and then I might transition to something where after they've taken 4 weeks to record their RPE, I might take one of those squat sessions, keep the other 2 completely defined, take one session, and then start to implement RPE as a form of programming after they've had some weeks to do it, so that we're kind of gradually introducing that process. And one way to do that might be to say, okay, I'm going to assign the load, I'm going to assign an RPE range, and I'm going to tell you your reps should probably be somewhere in this slot. So, for example, I might say, you're going to be in the 8 to 12 rep range, most likely, at this load, on the squat, on this day. Do this and stop where you think is about an RPE 8. Send me the video. And so that's a process where you're kind of, you're going from using RPE on the back end, as I said, in those first 4 weeks where you say, hey, do what's assigned, just tell me your guess as to what the RPE is. You're starting with that. Then you're moving to a system where 2 out of the 3 days you're still doing that. One day you're saying, okay, give this a shot. Try to stop at an RPE 8. Send me the video, take a look at it. So you're kind of gradually teaching them that process as you go. And so it allows them an opportunity to use RPE and treat RPE as a skill. And additionally, you would obviously in the process of teaching them that, you would tell them, hey, this is a skill. You're going to suck at this at first. And I'll literally say that, like, this is RPE. You're not going to be good at this, and it's okay. But we're going to teach you how to do this, and here's the process of doing that. So.
Amazing. I really like that. Okay. So Pat, we are just coming up on time here. I know that half hour has flew by, hasn't it? And you've run out of coffee. So, you know, we've timed that quite well, I suppose. But just before we go, is there anything, like any bit of advice or a couple of words of wisdom that you want to leave the podcast listeners with?
Wow, that is a fantastic question. I think that it's a good idea to keep the basics in mind anytime you are looking at program design, exercise selection, training intensity, recovery, all of those things. There's probably some big picture items you want to keep on your list of check boxes to make sure that you're getting these things accomplished, and make sure that when you do focus on some of the minutia, like, oh, should I take this to RPE 8.5 or 9 on this day? Should I add one set here? You know, make sure that as you're making these finite adjustments, and it could be something to your diet too, where you're like, maybe I need to add 20 more grams of carbs. Make sure that you keep those big picture items in place. And so, for example, with your training, well, over the course of entire like macro cycles, are you making progress? Do you feel good on a day-to-day basis? Are you managing just session to session recovery, where the stuff you do on day 1, by the time you get to day 2, are you able to train without feeling like shit? Are you able to stick to your diet? Does your diet, is at least something that's like sustainable, that makes you feel good, and does it gradually get you closer to your goals? And so these are the big picture items that I think sometimes, in my experience coaching people, it's these big picture things that get lost when they start focusing on this minutia. And sometimes the minutia just gets confusing because we think about this stuff, and like, I'll admit, there are times with myself with program design where I just like grab my hair and I'm just like, I know what the hell I'm doing. Like, I'm looking at this and I'm going, wait a second. And then it always helps me to just go, hold on, let's go back to these basics. Let's think about principles instead of specifics, and see if those principles will kind of guide me towards what the right decisions are. So that would be my little rant.
No, I love it. I do really love it. People just get so caught up in the minutiae of detailing and what's the perfect reps, what's the perfect exercise, and they forget about the big things. So I think that's a really good highlight and a good thing to finish on, Patrick. So that's brilliant. So what I'll do is I will get all of your links and share the Facebook group on the comment section of the YouTube video, as always, guys. So if you've got any questions at all for Patrick, myself, or the two boys at TRA, then please put them down, and we will get back to you as soon as we possibly can on them. So Patrick, thank you very much for giving up your time as well today. Really appreciate it, and take care. We will speak to you soon.
Thanks for having me.